Hello and welcome to another episode on Strilingo. Today I have Tina Saxena with me. Tina is a personal life transformation coach. The reason why I approached Tina to do a podcast session on Strilingo is because 2023 started with layoffs, and looks like we are ending the year on the same note. Just about 2 weeks ago, an audio streaming platform laid off a significant part of its workforce, and it's getting to be a little scary being a corporate worker, uh, because it creates a negative perception not only for the ones who are asked to leave but even for the ones who are asked to stay back. So Tina, welcome to Strilingo. I'm so grateful that you could be doing this for us today. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to speak about this. As a coach, as a counselor, this is what I help people with. Not the layoffs as such per se, but basically whenever people have issues in life for which they find themselves knotted in trying to face. And our jobs as coaches is to help them unravel those knots. Because on our own, when we're looking at stuff, we sometimes get tunnel visioned. And it helps to have somebody who is trained to help you open up your vision a little bit so that you can actually see, instead of dilemmas in your life, either this or that, choices and options from which you can pick and choose and live your life in a more empowered manner and make decisions which are more aligned not only with the situation but also with who you are as a person.
Tina, as a corporate worker myself, I understand when layoffs happen and when the news is all over the place, it does affect. It does affect you somehow, even if you don't belong to that particular company. And if you belong to that particular company and you are retained, that becomes an even bigger headache because there's that lingering fear that I could be next, I could be next, and it becomes difficult to work under such circumstances. There's a defeatist mentality that corporates begin to develop. And I'm sure 2023, I have been working for over 17 years. So I have colleagues, ex colleagues, who are all impacted by how this year has been for us, for the workforce in general. What would you like to tell somebody like me who's going through this period of layoffs? I may not be affected by it directly, but I am definitely affected by it indirectly because I'm a part of this negativity, the part of this negative news which is surrounding me every day.
So it's a huge topic actually, if you look at it. Let's go back to the time when we didn't have a job. We were studying and we had an identity, which was the identity of being a student. And then we got a job and then we started working at the job. And eventually what happens is we get comfortable with the job. And we build on the identity of being a corporate worker, a professional, an executive, whatever it is, a manager, an assistant manager, whatever comes. And slowly, as human beings, we have a tendency to become very comfortable where we are. And this is where the job title that we have tends to start becoming our identity as a person.
Correct.
And we forget that we are way bigger and much more than just the identity of the job title that we've taken on. So anything that comes up as negative news or anything that's happening on the corporate grapevine is bound to affect us. If there's somebody who's taking on people, there's somebody who's laying off people, if there is a segment of the market or a segment of the field of job that we are doing which is in difficulty, this is going to create worry because we are very strongly identified with what we do. So one of the best things is to cultivate a persona which goes way beyond the job identity that we have. And that's something, like we started this podcast saying 2023 has been it started with layoffs and it's going to end with layoffs. I would say that is one, not even one side of the coin, it's one segment of the pie, or it's one pie of the circle of life. So we have to start looking at life with a more balanced outlook, which means we need to kind of step back a little bit from whatever we are entrenched in, because it's the tunnel vision that starts giving us the heebie-jeebies, the fear that starts coming out. And then fear is a cycle, it's a very vicious cycle which perpetuates itself. So to really be able to get a little bit of relief from the worry, from the angst, from the anguish and the suffering and the entire fear mentality that's around us, we need to step back a little bit and look at our lives as way more than the jobs we do. You did mention it's true that having a job, we kind of get entrenched in a kind of situation where we have families to look after, we have bills to pay, we have a role in society based on the level of job or the income that we have.
Yeah.
And we are way too connected with all of this, because of which the moment anything happens to rattle this, the fear starts coming in, and then there's this trigger effect, the domino effect, which starts pushing us down.
Yeah.
And it takes more of a toll on our well-being than effectively what would happen if we were to, let's say, lose the job. Because we have to look at the basics of life. Is there a roof on our head? Is there food in our tummies? And basically, that's what our needs are to start with. When we were students, we still managed it. When we started as an intern, we still managed it. As we went up the ladder, we managed it better and better because our needs and our wants grew with us. So taking a step back is very, very effective to start with.
I think you've given a very spiritual bent to this whole thing, which is good because, like you said, we are so caught up in the imagery that we are creating or is being created by the virtue of having the job that we do, that sometimes that becomes the be all and end all of our existence. But like you said, if you take a step back and you don't identify yourself as I am only my job or I'm only my income, but as long as my basics are taken care of, maybe it's a learning lesson also for me, who knows, maybe I need to learn something more, which is why this has come. While I understand that, Tina, but I will also tell you that, I have colleagues who have been working for 15 years now, ex colleagues, and if they happen to lose a job and they look at the job description when they're applying for a new job, sometimes the ask is so it seems so alien to them. It may be because there's so much of fear that if I take on this new job, maybe I won't be able to, prove myself. Maybe I was thrown out of my old job because I wasn't able to prove myself. I think we need to tell people that sometimes a layoff is not based on how a person performs. It sometimes is a larger decision based on how the company is performing and where the company wants to go from point A to point B. It could be that they are closing down a vertical altogether, which is why layoffs have happened. It could be that they want to channelize their organization into a different route altogether, which would require a different set of workers to come in. But layoffs are always looked upon as a sort of personal defeat. So when
Mm.
somebody, when you speak to people, Tina, and I know that I'm sure you speak to so many people across who address these kind of personal problems, what is that one thing that you tell them, besides that, first survival, then everything else? Besides that, what is that one thing that you tell them that, you know, do this for now, just do this for now, practice it for 5 days? Is there any special mantra a corporate goer can just recite every day to keep that resilience going, not to give up? Because many
Okay.
people give up.
Okay. So most of the times the layoff is not personal. We are trained or we are conditioned to take it personally. And you're right about that. It's not just sometimes, most of the times, because today companies are very, very global and companies go after profit. That's the bottom line for most of them. They have mission statements and vision statements, but we have become a little bit dehumanized in a certain manner. So we have to break the conditioning which says it's about me. It's not. Uh, the short mantra would be basically looking at it not as a problem or an issue or a big thing to cause you worry, but looking at it as an opportunity, like you said, for learning, stepping back First of all, looking at my basics taken care of, where can I cut down on the extra expenses? Because a lot of us do build up a huge amount of excess in our lives, which is
Right.
a self-perpetuating machine. So what we need to do is look at everything, pare down expenses, and believe me, it's possible. I've changed career many times. I've had the fortune and the blessing of being able to follow my heart. So I have been in corporate, I have left corporate, I've gone into many, many different careers. Don't identify yourself with the job. Take a step back, look around you. Okay, this is the problem. Looks like the problem. What is the positive part of this problem? How can I become something more? And sometimes I understand when you say when you've been laid off, the entire negativity is there. You feel as if you failed as a human being,
Yes.
but you haven't failed at anything. Somebody's taken a decision which has affected you. So you have to remove the personal part, the me, poor me, why me from it. Why me is never a great question to ask, no matter what happens to you in life. Um, just a word of advice from experience. The questions that we ask ourselves will eventually determine the answers that our brain will give us.
Wow.
So,
That's such a
very, very,
profound statement. The
yeah, that's
questions
true.
that we ask ourselves is ultimately the answer that our brains will give us. We already know what we want to hear. We will just
Yeah.
want, we just
Why
want
have
to,
I been laid off?
hmm,
And the brain will say, because you made a mistake on that project, because the boss doesn't like you, because that colleague is not happy with your performance, and they've talked to the people in the management and got you taken care of, or whatever it is. Let's ask ourselves a different question. And none of this may be true. Let's ask ourselves a different question. What's happening around the global scenario in which I'm a part? Oh, well, there is a shift in the market because of which I have probably been let go of. What can I do about it? Well, you can sit and cry. You can upgrade your skills. You can take some time off to yourself. You've got enough savings to take care of yourself for 3 months. That's the way your brain comes up with better answers. Or maybe, how can I utilize this situation to my advantage? Now, that's the best question to ask yourself. And your brain will say, well, let's have a look at it and see how we can do that. And then the brain will start giving you the answers.
hmm,
And the answers are usually all inside us. Unless, of course, you need to get a skill based or knowledge based answer. So, the questions that we ask ourselves, and this is not only for jobs, this is for everything in our lives, will determine the answers that our brain gives us and eventually the quality of our lives. The attitude that we hold is going to determine what's going to take place in our lives. So, we can decide to sit in a victim mindset and look around in fear and say, well, that one was laid off, that one was laid off, I may be next. Or we can say, well, this is what's happening globally. But there are people who come through the worst adversities, the worst depression in the market, the worst scenarios. For example, the pandemic, it
yes.
hit everyone. A lot of people lost a lot of things. There were people who took that as an opportunity and they came up winners. Now, what happened? Were they lucky? What happened? They had a mindset which was different. And they asked themselves, this is what's happening around me. I've lost 15 years of my work because of this pandemic. How can I still come up a winner? And they rebuilt themselves. So, do you have the willingness to do it? Or are you going to sit and cry in a corner? That's good too for a while, for a
Hmm.
while. But how long will you sit and cry?
Tina, I don't know about the international standards, but in India, especially, I can tell you that a layoff is often looked upon as, something that is to be ashamed about. That, oh, what will friends and family say? What will relatives say? As if, these are not people who are paying your bills, but we become so answerable to family, extended families, family, everybody, our social identity, which is our social media platforms, all of that. uh, Such a beautiful thing happened in 2023, that when Netflix laid off a portion of its workforce, there, for the first time on LinkedIn, I actually saw people who came out and said that, hey, I was laid off. And, as I bid goodbye to this wonderful organization, blah, 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 whatever. Maybe there are posts that have been written in the past, but I didn't come across it. I came across it only when a Netflix employee put up that post. I felt so good, good about it, because for the first time, somebody is announcing a layoff, saying that as I bid goodbye to this company, whatever the circumstances are, I have lost my job. Now on to different opportunities in life. It was nothing to be ashamed. So with that one post, they had just cut off all the shame that can exist around a layoff. I mean, my
Yeah.
job is my job. I wake up and I come to office every day. Nobody else should feel ashamed on my behalf or proud on my behalf. If I do well, I can feel proud, or I can want to do better in life. If something opposite happens, I will have to deal with it. Like you said, what next? I can either sit and cry, or I can figure new options. But there's a huge chunk of people who are so much, bothered by this fact that what will people say if I lose a job. Like, you're bringing us back to your first answer that you gave, that your job is not your only identity. The shame
Mhm.
surrounding layoffs is so terrible. It makes a person, it almost makes a person feel the lowest that he or she can, as if there's nothing beyond a job in a person's life. And I've seen
Yeah.
it happen.
Yeah. I understand that, because the self-esteem that we have, which is again tied to the identity, which is tied to the job title, to the income coming in and all, takes a big hit when something like this happens. But like you said, in India, there's a lot of shame. See, collectively, the ideas that we have about society are formed of individuals who have ideas.
Hmm.
Now, there may be a current school of thought in society, but we have to understand one thing. We are part of society, but we are also very, very strong individuals.
Hmm.
And as an individual, I can either be pulled in the direction society is taking me. I may not be liking it, and I may just allow myself to be pulled in. Or I may decide to stand and say, I'm an individual and I have a mind of my own. I have a brain of my own. I have my own thoughts. Like you just said, a layoff happens because of so many reasons.
Correct.
Just because society says it's shameful, why am I going to accept something which logically is not true, which on so many planes is not true? I, as an individual, can make a decision and say, society may go where it wants to. It's my life. I'm the one who's living it. I'm the one who's feeling it. I refuse to take on the feelings which society has collectively built up and is pushing on to me. That's when I become a rebel in the good sense. That's when I become a black sheep in the good sense.
Hmm.
And for that, I need to be more aware and mindful about who I am as an individual, out of the roles which I play in society, be it a corporate worker, a professional, a mother, or whoever I am in society. Now, that requires courage,
Hmm.
but we all have it.
Some of us, I think, need to be pushed a little harder than the rest for that courage to come out also sometimes, because only
Yes,
when you're
yes,
at your lowest, you have nowhere else to move but to move up. There's no place to go
very
other
true.
than to move up. So I think it's every opportunity in life from a spiritual perspective. If I look at something like this, which is so self-defining for most of us today, or from a spiritual aspect, it could be just that next step. Sometimes brightest star the brightest sunshine will only come after the stormiest night. So it depends on how stormy that night was for you. But we are living in such a day and age that philosophy is often brushed on the under the carpet, because competition is so fierce, and to get from point A to point B becomes the only motto in life. But what I've understood, Tina, speaking to you today, is that yes, you have to get up in the morning, go earn, fend for yourself, look after your family, but you are also a person. Never forget that you are also a person. You are an individual. You you are not defined by the things that you do. The things that you do are because you have responsibilities to fulfill as a karma yogi, but that is not the be all and end all of you. A layoff does not define you per se. A layoff could be because the company wants to restructure on a higher level, and it is nothing to do with you personally. That is the third point a person can understand. The fourth thing a person can understand is either you can sit and cry, which is also good up to a point, like you said, but the next step would be get up and upskill yourself. I think in today's day and age, Tina, I want to know if you agree that upskilling is the only way forward. And if not from a corporate growth perspective, at least from a personal growth perspective, learning is always healthy. Learning is
Yes.
always healthy. So, if you know something and you have free time, if you upskill yourself, maybe then you're going to the next level. And then maybe that layoff just worked wonders for you. Otherwise, you would be caught up in your comfort zone.
Totally. I would just like to go back the statement which you said, competition is fierce.
Hmm.
According to whom? In what field?
In according
On
to
what
us,
level?
we have made these things up in our own head. I think sometimes in our attempt to build or maintain an image, we are only running like rats towards which what destination, I don't know, Tina. Everybody is running, so I am also running. That is the mindset
Yes.
now. But here
Yes.
comes that thing that, okay, you can be the black sheep in a good way. While everybody is running, you can take a step back and say that I have a job, but I also am my person. And my person, me, the individual, is not defined by a job, a company, a layoff, a rise in salary, what relatives will say, what co workers will say. It is my individual growth, and I need to take care of myself. We often forget ourselves, Tina. I think that is what is happening. We forget that we are a human being. We forget that we are so different from the next human being, because
Yeah.
we are all running like sheep towards a desk. Because everybody is running, we are also running. I don't know where we are running, but
That's that's the question. What 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 am I doing it all for? Who for is easy to answer, for myself, for my family, for people. But for what purpose am I doing this? How does the job title define me actually? And you said it very rightly. We forget we're human beings. We become human doings. We
uh,
become titles,
correct,
and we are not human doings.
correct, correct, correct.
And life is not a competition, life is not a race. So, like you said, we are in the rat race many times, but staying in the rat race is a choice. And many times I ask people, why don't you simply let go of a few things that you do? Especially with women, this comes up a lot. They need to be super women, super moms, super job effective. The house should be nice and spick and span and efficient. And a lot of them do suffer from this overwhelm, anxiety, stress. And the question is, for what purpose? And often it is a self imposed or a comparison because that one does it better, or my mother in law, or my mother does it in such a way. But your mother in law probably didn't have a job to look at. Your brother had a different kind of support system, which you don't have as a nuclear family. So we have self imposed limits, which we've taken on, and then we've accepted them as our own. So the good question to ask is, who am I? And for what purpose am I doing what I'm doing? No matter what it is, whether it's a job, whether it's any role we play. And taking care of yourself, we forget, especially as women, that self love is different from being selfish. And most of the time, we are giving the love outwards and we forget about taking care of ourselves.
Yes.
And if we cannot take care of ourselves first, sooner or later, life will drain us. We will be like a dish rack that's finished everything. Life for other people goes on. We are the ones who will suffer in our health, in our well being, in our mental equilibrium in so many ways. So we have to remember that self love and self care starts with us. Once we are taken care of, is when we can take care of the rest of the world, whether it's the job or the family.
Tina, I'm so happy that we could do this episode because, like I said in the beginning, that 2023 started on such a bad note. It's ending on that same bad note. But now, after talking to you, it depends on how I look at that bad note. So, this. So I thought that I'm going to just leave this podcast as the last podcast of the year for Strilingo, saying that, you know what, this year was all about layoffs. But yes, this year was about layoffs, but it depends on how you choose to look at it. You choose to look.
Brava.
So that is what I'm taking away from this podcast. I started with a mindset and you just like taken me to a whole different tangent. And I'm so grateful because let's be honest, I also get affected by these things. When I see these things happening to certain sections of the particular industry, certain people that I've worked with, known in the past, it does affect you. But like you said, it is only a phase. It is not the most defining phase in your life. Many other things have happened and many other things will happen. Positive mindset every day and you can win the hardest battle.
So there's a rule, which is like what is input? Input equals output in a way. So if I'm going to allow all the negative news to be input into my mind and around myself, the output is normally going to be negative, no matter how hard I try to keep myself positive. So one of the good things to do is keep an eye on the news, but take it with a grain of salt, because that's just one part of the entire circle of life. And where there is the news of layoffs which are taking place, there is the other flip side, which means if I lose the job, I have the freedom to become who I want to do what I want to, and go into flights of fancy, because a lot of us take the route of the job, we start working at it, and then we get stuck into it. Whereas if we don't have the job, man, I can do anything I want. I mean, as a kid, I wanted to become a fashion designer. I wanted to become a teacher. I can actually just, without even getting a job, go and sit and teach people, feel the satisfaction of connection, and in the meantime, get my own self into balance, equilibrium, and figure out what, despite what's happening in the corporate sector.
Exactly. And all
It's an
this while
opportunity.
keeping a check when you have the job, keeping a check on expenses as well, because that can boil down to a huge problem in case, there's a gap in income. Because this is one lesson I think banks, credit card companies definitely don't want us to learn. But, but I think.
Finance management, I wish they taught us that in school. They don't.
Right. Yes, yes, it's a very, very important, topic. Uh, like you mentioned, Tina, that you will have free time to do things that you probably had dreamed about once upon a time, maybe never had the time. While you have a job, keep your expenses in check as well, because it's important to be financially responsible. It's not because you're
Very.
facing a layoff, it's because it's important to be financially responsible. That's an attitude you can inculcate, which can give you very rewarding benefits if at all such a circumstance ever happens to come in your life.
Definitely. The past generations learned it the hard way. The latest generations have had it a little bit easier, so they have to learn it a little bit more difficult. But the sooner you learn it, the better it is.
Correct.
So whenever you have a rise in income, doesn't mean your lifestyle should automatically rise until your income has been well stabilized over a good period of time. So these are things, again, the knowledge is available everywhere. Like you said, learning helps you keep growing as a person.
Right.
And by the way, our brain doesn't stop growing when we leave school or college. Our brain continues to grow as long as we continue to do something about it. So it's a good thing to keep expanding yourself as a human being. And the core message would be, look at your self-identity. Your self-esteem is tied to it. Expand your self-identity.
I hope, people listen to this podcast intently, not because of anything else, but just because of the very small, small changes that you spoke about, which, if they bring about in their life, can go a long way in keeping them mentally healthy, because that's where it all stems from. If you have to be mentally healthy, and then, you can do things that you probably won't even think about if you're mentally unfit. Thank you so much, Tina.
Definitely.
It was educational speaking to you. Like I said, I started on a certain note, and you took me to an all different tangent. I'm definitely going to release this as the last podcast of the year, but on a good note. That a layoff is
Definitely.
not a defining factor in your life. It is just another day in your life. It is all about how you look at it.
It's just a phase, correctly said. Just a
Thank,
part.
thank
Thank
you so
you.
much, Tina. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you.